My name's Trevor, the Program Engineering Manager for Corvettes, and with me is David Simpson.
I'm David Simpson. I'm the Program Quality Manager for all of the Powertrain products.
So we're here to talk about the ZR1X on this beautiful morning. Actually, it's much warmer yesterday when we did this tech talk. It was in the afternoon. I was actually standing here shivering, so it's nice to stand here and be nice and warm and comfortable. Alright, ZR1X, the quickest Corvette we've ever produced, approximately 50 horsepower total, 1064 from that impactful ZR1 LT7 engine that we introduced in model 25, coupled with a 186 horsepower front wheel electric motor. I'll let Dave talk a little bit more about the PAE system in a little bit, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. Hear me at the back, okay? So I'll talk a bit about the exterior and the differences with the exterior. Just wait, we'll turn the volume up a little. That better? Okay. So ZR1X exterior is extremely similar to the ZR1. So the aero packages, the treatments, the graphic of the car is very similar to the ZR1. It's hard to develop or improve upon the amazing airflow, aerodynamics and downforce of the ZR1 at 1,200 foot-pounds of downforce at max speed. Around a little under 1,000 at sort of most track speeds around here on Nürburgring that reach 180, 190 miles an hour. One thing that is new on 26, and it's actually on the ZR1 as well, I'll talk about that in a bit more detail, that is very visibly different, is you probably noticed over there the enormous brake package. So we've got what we call the J59 brake package from Elcon, 10 piston front, 6 piston rear, an enormous rotor as well, all carbon ceramic. That comes standard on all ZR1Xs. In fact, just to quote a figure to give you an idea of what that brake package develops. At the Nürburgring, they measured up to 1.9 G of braking. So if you've ever experienced even 1 G of acceleration or lateral acceleration, you know what 1.9 Gs would feel like with your shoulder blade in your seatbelt. So that J59 package on the ZR1 is also available with the ZTK package. So in model 26, the ZR1 also gets that brake package and the track package, but ZR1X gets that as a standard package. Other things with the ZR1X. So a couple of guys at the tech talk this afternoon will talk a lot about the displays, but and the ZR1X, the center performance display is probably the most dynamic you'll see in any of our Corvette range, just because it really has everything. It's got turbo boost, it's got front axle engine power and torque, it's got rear motor engine power and torque. Extremely dynamic center display, really telling you as the driver what the car is doing at all times, whether it be on the street or the track, and really being able to show that off and show the car's capability. The other thing that's new on the ZR1X is PTM moding. There are 4 new PTM modes, Performance Traction Management, if you're not familiar with what PTM stands for use on the track. And that is really all about leveraging that front axle, that front electric motor to the most of its capability. So we have what's called, I'll start from probably what's the least amount of energy usage to the most. So endurance mode is the first one. Endurance mode is really set for if you are doing sort of maybe open lapping or multiple laps of the track. It really utilizes that front axle but conserves the battery energy to really use it when you need it on the track. The next PTM mode up from that is a qualifying lap, or it's called qualifier mode. That is really set up to exhaust the full capability of the battery. So at the end of that lightning lap that you do, you really use every piece of energy you can get out of that front axle and the battery. We then also have, it's not really a motor as such that you use on the full circle, but what's called push to pass. So the cruise control button on the steering wheel, that hopefully no one ever uses on the track, is utilised for push to pass. You can press that button and really maximise the front energy output to overtake. So it's similar to something that you see in a lot of race cars, F1, etc., where they have that sort of technology. It's available at your fingertips with that cruise control button with that mode available. The last one is really, it's called PTM Pro. So in basically all the range of Corvettes, you can turn everything off, right? There's a PTM setting that effectively turns traction control and ESC off completely, and really putting the capability of the car in your hands as the driver completely. But in the case of the ZR1X, you still have e-all-wheel drive, so it's maximising traction, stability of the car without measuring and torque vectoring and providing and really computerisation of where torque's applied to the wheels. It's maximising that, but using the front axle to really give you that extra traction and pull over the corner while maximising your driving capability. So they're the modes. I'm going to hand over to Dave. We'll get into questions at the end here, but I'll hand over to Dave to talk a little bit more about the electric motor and battery.
Okay. Thanks, Trevor. So as I mentioned, I work in the powertrain side of GM. I've been fortunate enough to work on the transmission, the drive unit system, and battery pack, and then now the engine. So like Trevor said, I'll go through some of the improvements and changes that we've done for ZR1X versus what we had in E-Ray. I'll continue pointing at this car because it's easy to see, but this car is set up as a ZR1, not a ZR1X. So anyone who looks, there is no front drive motor in this vehicle here. You can obviously see where the room is for one to be installed, and that's pretty much what we did on ZR1X. So starting with what's similar to E-Ray, the exact same battery pack is used in E-Ray and ZR1X, and then the drive unit is a slightly changed or improved drive unit versus what's in E-Ray. So those familiar with E-Ray have 160 horsepower on the front axle for the front wheels. On ZR1X, we turned it up a little bit and we get 186 horsepower on the front drive unit. The ways that we did that is changing the peak speed of the motor from 16,000 to 17,000 RPM to really squeeze a little bit more juice out of it. When we did that, we had to make a couple small changes to the case overall, and a few bearings inside, a couple small parts. But as far as the gearing goes, it's the same 816 gearing that we get out of the E-Ray. All of the hardware from the gears side is the same. And like I said, it's just kind of a little bit of a tweak to some of the bearings and pockets for those bearings and things like that, in order to ensure that at that higher power, with the motor spinning a little bit faster, that we would live for the full life of the vehicle. And it does so excellently. With that additional power, we also pulled up our top speed on the front axle. So again, those familiar with E-Ray know that we disconnect the front axle at 150 miles an hour. So ZR1X, that actually would have been just before we were crossing the finish line on a quarter mile. Not that it would have slowed us down, but we knew we could have a little bit more out of it. So we raised that disconnect speed to 160. That'll get us pretty much through the traps, utilizing the full front axle. So similar speaking, when you're on a quarter mile race or racing, quarter mile, just like in E-Ray, ZR1X will fully deplete the battery in that quarter mile pull. So you go to the staging lane, have 100% state of charge on the battery. By the time you get to the end of the track at wide open throttle, you will have used 100% of your usable range out of that battery. Now, some people will be concerned with that, but by the time you slow down, turn around, hit the return lane, and get back to the pits, you'll be just about, if not fully charged back up and ready to go again. So we're able to do that because the battery is designed to go quick discharge, quick charge. So it's 525 amp discharge rate and just about 400 amp charge rate through the battery or in and out of the battery, while we're keeping that cool and doing that through the different power modes. So that battery is well at touch, so it's the same 1.9 kilowatt hour battery that I touched on before. We actually use a little bit more of it. So pre-ride we were using about 1.1 kilowatt hours. In the ZR1X, we will use about 1.5 kilowatt hours of that battery. So we did that by kind of stretching the range. Where's the lowest we can go with the state of charge, and how much higher can we pull that state of charge up. So again, that's enabled by the front motor, again, spinning higher, spinning faster. We can throw a little bit more juice in there, and then how we use that power, we actually open up that range about 16%. So we can discharge it a little bit deeper, charge it up a little bit higher, and hold it higher, and that's what's open that range about 16%. That'll be on track, off track, driving on the highway, anything like that. So you'll notice your state of charge is just spread out a little bit there. And then the Trevor kind of mentioned with the new displays and the new cluster in the car, you can kind of monitor that a little bit closer than you could on E-Ray. The values that it shows are very accurate, using those center displays and all the different options we got now. You can really watch your power on axle quite a bit more and have a better idea of what's going on and understand when you're using what. So I think that's all that I have to touch on the drive system overall in the front. So I think we'll open up the question and answers. So the RPM on the front motor is 17,000 RPM. So that's the front electric motor within the front axle. To give everyone an idea, the stator on that front drive motor is about this big. It's about a coffee can in diameter. So it's a super small motor, and that's what's pulling 186 horsepower.
Yeah, we can talk to those now. So under 2 seconds for the 0 to 60 time, and under 9 seconds for the availability of the ZR1X is this year. So later this year, we plan to be producing ZR1X.
So the question is, when does the engine start if you start on just the electric motor? So on ZR1X, if you use stealth mode, it's the same speed, the same load, stuff like that is what it is in E-Ray. So you can use stealth mode for like 3 to 4-ish miles. So if you want to get out of your neighborhood, then up to 45 mile an hour. So 45 mile an hour, or if you tip into the throttle too much, or if you need your HVAC control turned on, you start that gas engine as you're rolling, as you're driving, and just keep on going. The 160 mile an hour is where we disconnect the front axle. So ZR1X, just like ZR1, has a top speed of 233 miles an hour. But anything over 160, the car would be only rear-wheel drive at that point. So when we get to that high of speed, you have two options, and that's either essentially add a transmission to your drive unit, or just disconnect it and let it go. So when we get up to our peak speed, we just disconnect the front axle, or else we would overspin that motor higher than the 17,000 RPM. Yep, so the question is the temperature range for when you can use stealth and shuttle is something that they are identical to E-Ray. So 50 degrees Fahrenheit, you can enter into stealth mode or above 50. And then shuttle mode is, I think it's 15 degrees Celsius Fahrenheit. 15 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't see that part. So final weight for ZR1X versus ZR1 is just under 300-pound difference. So the PA system still weighs about the same, about 300 pounds. Obviously, when we add that system, there's a few parts we can take out. So the overall car is just under 300 pounds heavier. I think we were saying 4950-ish for the car total.
3950.
Yeah.
One thing I might add, we talked a lot about the performance of this car and how quick it is and how good it is on track, but many of us drove ZR1 and ZR1Xs here from Michigan to support this weekend. It is one of the most comfortable cars I've driven on a long distance. It is amazing on the street. There might be a few people sitting here that have driven over 1,000 horsepower cars and know what over 1,000 horsepower feels like. It probably didn't come out of the factory with a warranty either, but it sometimes isn't a fun car to drive on the street, right? But this is an amazing car on the street. It really is a gentleman's racing. So, just thought I'd add that.
Piggyback on that one as well. So, the question we got yesterday, I thought was a good one. What is the usable life and warranty on the PE system or the front axle system? So the car has the 336 bumper bumper, 5 year 60 powertrain, and then the battery, the high voltage battery, has an 800 warranty. So 8 years, 100,000 miles for the high voltage battery in the system. We would not be giving that out if we thought we were going to have to use it a lot. So it's something that really shows how hard we have tested this car and what we've put it through and how much belief we have behind that in the car. Yes, the E-Ray battery is the same 800.
Where does the battery go in?
So just like E-Ray, the high voltage battery sits right up here in the tunnel. It drops in, lifts in from the bottom, and then you still have your 12-volt battery that controls most of the car. So within the battery pack, the high voltage battery pack on ZR1X, just like E-Ray, at the back section you've got all of your electronics, so your battery system module, your thermal or power inverter, your APU as well to go from high voltage to low voltage, and then you've got 3 packs that run in the middle and 3 modules. We call it the 80 cells in total. And that's what powers the high voltage to the low system. Are they special tires? ZR1X is the same tire as ZR1. Okay. So again, I'm Dave Simpson. This is Trevor. There's a whole bunch of us here. Any other questions come up, you can find one of us or one of our coworkers will be happy to help you.